Okay. So I want to welcome everybody to Peter White Public Library. My name's Marty Acketts, and I'm the Adult Programming Coordinator here at the library. And it's my extreme pleasure to welcome Rosalie back to Peter White Public Library. I always love catching up with Rosalie. She and I have been friends for, gosh, more years than we probably care to admit.
True.
Yeah, we went to graduate school together, and I was a fiction writer at the time that Rosalie knew me, and then I was wooed over by the dark side of poetry. So anyway, but I'm going to just let you know of a few things that are going to be upcoming this month here at the library. We are going to be celebrating the Great Lakes Poetry Festival this month, and this Rosalie's reading tonight is sort of a precursor to the big event of at the end of April for the Great Lakes Poetry Festival. But we have a few things coming up here. On Friday, we have a film screening of a documentary called Poetry in Motion, and that particular film screening is 24 leading North American poets reading their work. And it's a really fantastic poetry documentary. And then at the end of the month here, I'm just going to give you a lineup. You can catch all of these things online if you want to. So on Monday, the 24th, April 24th, Monday at 7 p.m., we're going to have Jonathan Johnson, who's going to be reading from his books of poetry. And then on Tuesday, April 25th, we have Pulitzer Prize winner Diane Seuss, who's going to be reading from Frank Sonnets, among other things, that night. And that starts at 7 p.m. as well on Tuesday, April 25th. And you can find all these things on the YouTube channel here for Peter White Public Library. And then on Wednesday night, we have our newly appointed UP Poet Laureate, Beverly Mathern, who is going to be doing a reading from her new book of poems, which is called let me get this right. It's called Love Songs, Love Potions, Teas, and Incantations. So she's a really wonderful poet, Cajun poet, and I really encourage you to come here for that. Then on Thursday night, April 27th, we have a really special event. We have a poetry exhibit here from the Prison Creative Arts Project organization, and we have a whole bunch of art by people who have been incarcerated in prison or are currently incarcerated in prison. And we had a bunch of poets who wrote poems in response to those artwork, that artwork. So we're going to have music, we're going to have poetry readings, we're going to have artists who are going to be giving some testimonials during that time. And that's on Thursday, April 27th from 6:30 to 8 p.m. Again, that's on the YouTube channel. So lots of really great stuff coming up poetry-wise here at the library. But let me introduce Rosalie here, and then I'm going to turn things over to her. So Rosalie and I, as I said at the beginning of my introduction here, have been friends for, gosh, close to 30 some years, a little over 30 years. We went to school together, went through our master's program together, and we've always sort of kept in touch like this over the years. We've seen each other at readings or things like that. And what I can say about Rosalie, aside from the fact that she is one of the most beautiful poets and writes the most beautiful poetry that I've ever read, is that she's one of the kindest and most generous poets I've ever met and dealt with as well. She's just a treasure, and I've always treasured our friendship over the years. So let me tell you a little bit more about her professionally. She's the author of a few books of poetry, What We Keep, A Postcard from My Mother, and The Geisha Box. And currently the new chapbook that she just published, the award-winning Tracking the Fox. Her poems and essays have appeared in quite a few literary journals, including Passages, North, Red Rock, Review, Rhino, The MacGuffin, Southern Poetry Review, third Wednesday. Her poem, Eating Corn Soup Under the Strawberry Moon, was one of 6 finalists in the 2020 Jack Grapes Poetry Prize for Cultural Daily. And in 2021, she was also one of 5 finalists for the distinction of UP Poet Laureate. And I still think that eventually she is going to be UP Poet Laureate. Anyway, her work basically her work has images of the natural world that are prominent throughout her poems, and also a lot of teachings from her Ojibwe father as well, who taught her how to provide careful stewardship and to always honor her surrounding environment. And you're going to hear this as you listen to her poems tonight. And just to let you know how things are going to go, we're going to let Rosalie read until about 7:30 or so. We're going to take a 5-minute break after that so people can get up, stretch their legs, get a drink of water, and then Rosalie will come back and read for another 10 or 15 minutes after that, and then answer some questions, okay? So that's the way things are going to go. And if you have questions or comments for Rosalie, if you put them in the chat, I'm going to be monitoring that throughout the reading. And then when we get to the end for the question and answer session, you can feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question or put them in chat as well. But please, please, please join me in welcoming my really good friend, Rosalie, to Peter White Public Library.
Thank you, Marty. And, you know, I can say many of the same things about Marty. He always inspired me when we used to be in graduate school. He inspired me to write fiction. Although I still stuck with my poetry. So thank you all for being here tonight. I'm so glad to be here. And so I'm just going to start reading from my book. This is the book, Tracking the Fox. Some of you have it because I see several people I know. And Marty, there's my daughter. You see her on here. She looks lovely. Okay. Marty knew her when she was a baby. Okay, say that we're really dating ourselves because she's 30 years old. So see? And I had her when I was still in graduate school. So I think we've known each other 33 or 34 years. That's scary. I mean, it's not scary. It's just those years rack up so fast. All right, I'm going to start off with one of my Ojibwe poems, and it's called The Medicine Bag. And so it's about, you know, generally a Native American medicine bag or medicine bundle is a container for items believed to protect or give spiritual power to its owners. In my poem, though, my medicine bag is metaphorical as it contains all the elements of my father's past, which of course relates to my own life and my daughter's and makes us what makes us who we are. And then I actually do have a medicine bag. That's my little medicine bag with my totem, which is a dragonfly on it. And I keep in here a couple of items that I use to inspire my writing. And one of them is, guess what? An agate from Lake Superior. So from up by the Porcupine Mountains that I almost threw back, but the park ranger that was helping me show me how to find agates, he told me, no, don't throw that one back. So the medicine bag. This is the medicine bag of my father's people. Here a sacred eagle feather, an arrowhead deep within, a handkerchief stained with coughed up blood. The lean-tos in this bag, the island where his family existed in winter, eating surplus beans and rice, an empty whiskey bottle, the father who gave him away. I reached deeper into old legends, an agate, a carved wooden boat, a birth certificate. His mother's name changed to Josephine Johnson instead of Helen Busno. Deeper, I uncover a single blue bead, a straw basket, a map of stars, the rape of his sister Mary at 14, the flutter of a white moth's wings. Fingers touch bone slivers, words I cannot pronounce, a cradle board, a lullaby he sang to me in his native tongue. His hands are in here, hammering, nailing, pounding, rubbing my back when I suffered from croup. Here, coiled in a corner am I, while tight as a ball, my daughter bends into a fetal curl. I turn the bag inside out. Filaments alone drift down. So that's my opening poem. Thank you so much. And hello, Caroline. I see you there. She's coming to us all the way from Maine. All right, so my next one, I thought I actually focused on the poems in the book that were UP oriented, my UP poems and my Native American poems. So the next poem is about when I left Marquette. And so when Sanara was 5 years old, we moved from the Upper Peninsula to Kansas, of all places. And I wrote this poem after sitting up on the Black Rocks our last time before we left. And so, and of course, anybody from Marquette knows where the Black Rocks are. And so, and the Black Rocks are famous for college students and people jumping off them into the icy waters of Superior. Marty, did you ever do that? Did you jump?
I have avoided that my entire life.
Sanari, though, you did it, didn't you? So my daughter did it.
You know what? It's like a rite of passage for anybody that goes to Northern. They have to do that.
Yeah, Sanara, you did it, didn't you? Did you jump?
More times than I can count.
More. See, she's. I know she's done it. I've never seen her do it, but
I'm sure we'll probably do it again this summer.
Those crazy. Well, I guess you're no longer a crazy college kid, though. Anyway, this poem was also published in the anthology And Here, 100 Years of Upper Peninsula Writing from 1917 to 2017. So before leaving, I climb black rocks with my daughter, who scrambles ahead. Close behind, I'm ready to reach out should she stumble on the uneven surface. At the top, we stare out at Superior, breathing in the peace of lake and sky. Below, a few waves crest white, then lap the million-year-old ledge beneath us. On a far shore, sugar maple, hemlock, balsam fir, and white pine cover the island and grow down sides of distant outcroppings. Pairs of seagulls rise from the bond rocks. They lift and circle, dip and glide. To the west, I point out Hogsback and Sugarloaf, remnants of ancient glaciers. Near us, a group of college students gather. We watch as they leap from the highest point to plummet into icy water. This ritual repeats year after year. Perhaps I think one day my daughter will dive from this cliff into Superior's icy blue. Her breath will catch when she rises and gulps in warm air. Yet her heart will beat again when she discovers effortless she can fall and still rise. For now, we simply sit side by side. Sun warms our shoulder blades and dampness gathers in the hollows of our necks, where tendrils of hair separate to expose skin to mid-afternoon light. I tell her this place, this moment will always be a part of us. Its mantra will call to us when we close our eyes and still hear lake sounds, as if someone placed a seashell against our ears. We will carry it inside. Inside here, she asks. She places a hand across her chest. Reaching, I take her other hand. I squeeze, but she pulls away. Don't hold on so tightly, she says. She was always independent, even then. And I have most of these poems memorized, kind of, but I know I messed up one word in here. It was into Superior Silvery Blue. But see, you guys wouldn't know that until later. I didn't tell you.
That was beautiful, Mom.
Thank you. I don't think you've ever heard me read that, or maybe you have. Okay, so the next one is about Founder's Landing, which is another famous spot in Marquette. And I was in Marquette sitting on the beach at Founder's Landing with my best friend, Jennifer. And Barty, you know, remember Jennifer Stanley, right? From college. It was the summer of 2017. And of course, everybody there knows that this is the beach where the founders of Marquette first rowed their boats ashore. And so my friend and I were talking about change and loss. And every time I come back to Marquette every summer, there's always something new happening. There's always something new that's been built. And I, I think sometimes all this marketing and tourism is taking over some of our favorite locations. And so, and it's often done in the name of progress, right? So later I went back to her house, and I'll always remember this. I'm sitting at her kitchen table and I wrote this poem, just like that. So it's a poem about loss, but it's also about learning to live with the things we have lost in this life. And it's called At Founder's Landing. I can do nothing about loss except learn from others who have also lost places, times, lovers, foes who are dear. I can walk into the sunrise or stroll along the lake, smooth my hands over rock. I can be strong as a white pine bending in a gale, the hawk swooping down for its evening meal, the lake itself that claims those swimmers foolish enough to embrace its undertow. I could wear my losses in the creases around my eyes. Oh, wisdom, I could say, the ability to know the difference. But can I ever truly learn? Such predictable humans we are, always wanting the unattainable, the unsustainable. But I hope that I can keep something, if only I know how to look up or down, to breathe deeply and hold those breaths, to inhale the fragrant pine needles crushed beneath my soles. Star patterns in the sky every night, milkweed on the prairie, monarch butterflies, fireflies, cricket songs in August. I can learn to live with loss. Let it toughen the muscles of my heart, even if its beat skips and stutters. I can draw a circle of protection and sit amongst the missing. Let their voices slip under my fingernails, reverberate in my mouth, and echo in my ears. Thank you. Thank you so much. And that poem also was the year after I lost my sister. So I was thinking about that loss as well. All right. So here's another UP poem from when I was a little kid. So my dad used to take me exploring, right, in the UP. So I grew up between, I was born in Munising and grew up between Escanaba and then ended up in Marquette as an adult. And so, though when I was a kid, my dad used to take me exploring. And one time I remember we came upon a beautiful waterfall on some back road, and we didn't know the name of it. I don't think there was anything. It's probably well marked now, but it was Sable Falls. So could be another falls, but hey, I like Sable Falls. So, so Sable Falls is located along Highway H58, just a few miles from Grand Marais. I don't know, Marty, have you ever been there?
Yeah, it's beautiful. It really is beautiful.
It was really beautiful. I've always wanted to go back. But anyway, you can tell me if this still sounds like Sable Falls, but I'm sure it was a lot more overgrown when I was a kid and more secluded before progress got in there. I bet you they built wooden boardwalks and things now and have signs all over the place. It's a tourist attraction now, I think. All right. We didn't know we were at Sable Falls. Dappled leaves brush our car's hood. Soon the dirt track grows narrower and narrower. A fallen tree blocks our path, and my father stops. When we get out, we can hear a gentle roar above the faint trill of songbirds in branches high above. I am so glad my mother isn't with us. She worries about many things. Flat tires, rabid animals, ticks and weasels. I know right now she wonders where we are and when we will return. The path crawls through dense thicket on one side, a drop-off slopes into a bramble-filled ravine. On the other, thimbleberries grow in abundance. My father pauses to pick some and offers a handful. Their fuzzy sweetness tickles my tongue. Breaking through the shrubbery, we see the waterfall at last. It cascades from a sandstone cliff and pools in a bubble of froth below. There are no signs to tell us our location, possibly the end of a once-traveled logging road unnamed on any map. Scrambling over rock face, I kick off both sandals and lower gangly 10-year-old legs into the foam. Father never warns me to be careful of falling, even though he knows I cannot swim, my mother's fault. She is always afraid of ponds, lakes, streams, anything that might drown her daughter. Cool spray reaches my face, dampens the end of each long braid. I kick up more spray until my shorts and white eyelet blouse are wet. Father joins me, removes his shoes and socks, our bare toes buried in icy blue. Our laughter reaches the coyotes in their dens and black bears asleep in a tree hollow. Our joy even purer than the rushing water. So Marty, does that remind you of Sable Falls?
Yeah, it does. You've captured it, although you are right, it's a little more touristy than it used to be.
Yeah,
So, I sometimes think that progress is not real progress, so.
yes, I agree with you so much, especially when I go to Founder's Landing and I see what they've done to it. When I was in college, none of that was there when we were in college. We used to just go down there and do whatever. Yeah. Okay, so my next one is also another UP poem. So my dad, he had lots of different jobs when I was growing up, and he always said he was a jack of all trades, but a master of none. I remember him saying that all the time. But one of his jobs was doing some logging around Nema, Michigan. So he used to work for those logging companies, again, clear cutting and tearing up all the forest. So, and he used to work out on the Stonington Peninsula too. And so we often stayed in little cabins, sometimes without electricity, or we pitched a tent in the heart of the Hiawatha National Forest, about 25 miles from Escanaba. And so this is one of my poems when we were living in one of those little cabins. And there's a little bit of irony in this poem. It's called Tree Fall. Sunday mornings, Dad flipped pancakes, filled a plate high, and poured maple syrup on top. We lived in a small cabin near the ghost town of Nema, where he cut trees for a living, jack and white pines. As they fell, their long limbs whispered like an intake of breath. When they landed, ground rumbled, little earthquakes that caused choke cherries to drop, cottontails to scatter, roused pine beetles who searched frantically for escape, sent the wolves howling even in daylight. Each time I shuddered inside, felt my heart stutter. But on those Sundays, far away from the clear cut, we looked out our window to a winding creek. Sentinel pines circled our shelter, protected us from summer gales and winter lake effect snow. Licking syrup from my fingers, I watched my dad stir another batch, waited for seconds. Thank you. When I wrote this poem, do you see the irony in it, Marty? When I wrote this poem, it just came to me. You know, there's the pines and everything was protecting us where we lived in that little cabin in the woods. And then my dad was out there up on the peninsula, clear cutting everything down. And I don't know, you know, they did have some logging practices. I mean, there was, you know, I think there was a lot of logging practices, you know, so they didn't tear everything down. But it still goes to show, you know, progress, right? And now this is the title poem for the book, Tracking the Fox. This is the title poem. There's my fox. And this poem actually came from a writing prompt. So it was right about a time you were lost. And so I have a writers group here in Grand Ledge where I live. I've had it for 17 years. And some of the people like Mary here is one of my members, my group. Caroline used to be. I was looking for poems about trying to write about directions, different things, compasses, finding your way, getting lost. And the book was going to be called The Language of Maps, right? It was about reading maps and so forth. It never materialized. It ended up becoming this book. But this book has a lot of directions in it. So anyway, but there's a story behind Tracking the Fox. When I was about 7 or 8, my mom used to tell, she had an old pair, there was an old pair of snowshoes my grandma had, those old fashioned big wooden ones. And she used to tell me that my mom used to go out tracking animals with those snowshoes in the woods. And one time her father told her, hey, do you realize you're tracking a coyote? Or it might have been a wolf. I think it was a wolf. And so I used to borrow those snowshoes when I was a little girl, and I used to take them up in the woods. not too far. But I ended up tracking a fox. I was a little bit older than her though. I was about 8 or 9, I think, when I did that. But I loved those old snowshoes. And so, so this is about the time I tracked a fox. Tracking the fox. In the snow, there are no footprints, at least no human ones. The animal tracks belong to the fox, who grandmother's shoes away when he creeps too close to the chicken coop. His ruddy fur has faded, his body lanky. There's little food this winter for the beasts. My father has found 2 dead deer in the woods, their bones sticking out, partly devoured. Perhaps the fox has been there. He looks healthier now, his sides bloated. I follow him on my snowshoes over one hill, then down another, until I reach the creek where water still trickles and hisses beneath a cracked sheet of ice. Tree branches graze my face when I crawl under the spruce, heavy with snow. The end of my long braid is soon soaked through. My snowshoes leave large lattice prints behind me, so I look like some dinosaur-era creature, feet crooked and unwieldy. When I look back, I see only white. I could be lost, but I'm not. In a cluster of nearby pines, a blackbird hurls away, causing a small avalanche. He calls out eerily. His loud calls make my heart quake. On the other side of the creek, I see movement against red rough bark, a brief slash of red. Fox has burrowed in. His beady dark eyes watch me. I should turn back now before I am truly lost. But unafraid, I stand, wait for one of us to make the first move. Thank you. And hope we're almost to 7:30. So I think I'm going to be able to read all the rest of these poems. So this is another poem about my dad, who kind of plays a prominent role in my book. My first book, or my second book, was called Postcard from My Mother, and it was focused on the women in my family. And I wrote that one. That was my graduate school thesis, Marty, the Postcard from My Mother book. And so I kind of wrote that one. It was about all the women in my family and about my daughter, because it was during the time when I was waiting for her to be born. So, but this book focuses more on my dad, and this one is called True North. So when he was, again, like I said, he used to take me for all these long walks in the woods and teach me about nature, but he always taught me how to find my way home. And so this is True North. In the woods, my father never needed a compass. He told time by the sun's position. When shadows grew long and slanted, he still knew the way to turn so we could find home. We walked for miles, changed paths, north, south, east, and west, through golden tamaracks in autumn, beneath old growth hemlocks, white pines, and birches in summer. If nightfall caught up to us, Father took my hand, admonished me to watch for roots, burrows tunneled into earth by badgers, woodchucks, or foxes. At dusk, the eastern screech owl's eerie trill filled our ears as it swooped down from its perch to devour a shrew or bat. If you think you are lost, Father told me, travel downhill, search for water, read the night sky. And he pointed at Polaris, perched at the tip of the Little Dipper's handle. In daylight, he taught me why trees have more leaves on one side. To find true north, he said, place a stick straight up in the ground, mark where the stick's shadow lands with a rock. But he was my true north. Astride his shoulders when I grew tired, I became taller than his 6-foot frame. His hands were the needle of my compass, his voice my straight-edged arrow. Thank you. I really need some water now.
So it's about 7:30. Why don't we take about a 5-minute break, Rosalie?
That sounds good. And then I will introduce the next poem. And
All right.
by the way, the True North poem is going to appear in a new anthology that James Cruz put out. And he's the one that selected my book as the 2022 Poetry Box chapbook first place winner. So.
Oh, that's exciting. That's
But
exciting.
He really liked this poem. He was in love with it. He's using it. So thank you. All right. I'm going to
Yep,
Sure,
let's
awesome.
take about 5 minutes and then
Okay.
we'll be back and we'll All right, we're just gonna get started in another minute or so as soon as Rosalie's back here. All right.
I was here just hanging out.
All right, awesome.
Do you think I have time for, I was going to read 1, 2, 3, 4 more poems. I'm not sure. I put an extra one in there.
Oh, I think you have time. Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
all right. So
Yep.
we will do that then. So
Okay.
hopefully everyone is back. So the next poem is a poem called Ice Storm, and it was another poem about when I was living. Actually, we were living in Escanaba in a mobile home on Portage Point. So it was another place I lived when my dad was working, he did carpentry work also. So he was doing some carpentry work. So this is Ice Storm. Ice cracks all night on the lake, and rain freezes upon branches until they snap. As I lie in the dark, I can hear them falling, loud explosions, then silence. One hits our trailer roof, startles the cat sleeping across my knees. Howling, she scrambles under my bed while I wait for the cave-in, but nothing happens. Pulling my splayed palms from my face, I hear my parents' murmurs. Father tugs on boots and pushes the door open. Its jealousy window lets in bursts of cold air as the panes rattle. Go back to sleep, dear. Everything's okay. More than 30 years later, awake at 3 a.m., I listen to the shotgun staccato of tree limbs grazing electrical wires and tumbling down, barricading the street in front of our house. The dog sleeps, my husband sleeps. I kick off the covers and wait for Armageddon. Shivering in my bare feet and robe, I stumble to the front window where I see red lights flashing over the snow. Everything is dark and bright, blue shadows on white, the sky a metallic gray, portending further devastation. No one to comfort me, not here, not now. In the morning, boughs from the white pines scatter throughout our backyard. One limb has sliced the fence, bending metal to the ground. The 100-foot sentry lists toward its wounded side in the translucent light. Holding my hand over my left rib, I feel the destruction. And this was a big ice storm we had here downstate. I think this was 2013 or 2012. I think a lot of people remember that. And I see my friend Leslie, who lives out in Montana now, is here. And I remember she was out of electricity for a few days. Hi, Leslie. She doesn't put her camera on. Okay, so see, I have people from Maine, from Montana. This is cool. All right. Now, this is my birth story poem I'm going to do. Now, we all have birth stories that our parents told us. Sometimes they become more embellished as the story is told over and over. And listening to my parents tell it, I kind of embellished it in my mind. So it ended up becoming this poem. So like I said, I was born in Munising, Michigan. And when I was born, my parents lived in Grand Marais in a cabin on the Adams Trail, where he was working for another logging company. And so the title of this poem is based on a poem by former poet laureate Joy Harjo. And I actually want to read Joy Harjo's poem because I love this poem. It's one of my favorites, and it's called Remember. So this is Joy Harjo's poem, not mine. And I think she was really young when she wrote this. If I remember from reading in her biography or her autobiography that I read. All right, this is her poem, Remember. Remember the sky that you were born under. Know each of the stars' stories. Remember the moon. Know who she is. Remember the sun's birth at dawn. That is the strongest point of time. Remember sundown and the giving away to night. Remember your birth, how your mother struggled to give you form and breath. You are evidence of her life and her mother's and hers. Remember your father. He is your life also. Remember the earth, whose skin you are. Red earth, black earth, yellow earth, white earth, brown earth. We are earth. Remember the plants, trees, animal life, who all have their tribes, their families, their histories too. Talk to them, listen to them. They are alive poems. Remember the wind. Remember her voice. She knows the origin of this universe. Remember, you are all people and all people are you. Remember, You are this universe, and this universe is you. Remember, all is in motion, is growing, is you. Remember, language comes from this. Remember the dance language is, that life is. Remember. I love that poem. Okay, and this is my poem, The Sky I Was Born Under. The sky I was born under was directionless. One could not tell if it was up or down. It began with a formation of pewter clouds, a winter storm warning, and then my mother's labor began in earnest. Soon the heavens spewed snowflakes larger than my fist, pushed into the space beneath her rib cage. The sky I was born under was wakeful, traveling in the warm cavern of womb. In my ears, mother's erratic heartbeat pounded. I leapt inside her like the snowshoe hare as it galloped across the field and ducked out of sight. My parents told me they drove for miles on M28, no center line to follow. Deer stayed hidden, as did fox and coyote. Not a time for creatures to roam or hunt food. They tucked themselves into dens and hollows. Insects crawled under the bark of trees and made love. Only Wolf broke silence with his body howls at the angry skies before he too hunkered down with his mate, paws tucked beneath his chest to wait. The sky I was born under was so bitter it froze the tips of one's fingers if exposed too long. A traveler died that night when his car ran out of gas, his body hunched and stiff over the steering wheel where he fell asleep before help arrived. The sky I was born under was unforgiving. My birth recorded months later, my father's race declared as Indian by a small town city clerk, not Ojibwe or Anishinaabe, just the harshness of Indian as non-entity. The sky I was born under was also forgiving. 2 days later, on the drive back to our home along the Adams Trail, I slept swallowed in blankets, my tiny palm cradled against mother's cheek, while father steered carefully over snow-packed roads. My mother told me a fox crossed in front of our car, brazenly waved his red tail, and father slowed to let him pass. The ermine greeted us before he bobbed under a mound of white. Beaver slapped ice from his tail at the river, and a migrating flock of snowy owls landed in a nearby birch and watched us with their wise eyes. When we trekked up the trail to the cabin's front door, she said a thin ray of sunlight broke through the clouds. I wailed for the first time, my voice ricocheted in the stillness, and all the forest creatures paused to listen. I had quite the imagination there. And this is actually my closing poem. And this is dedicated to Sanara. And when she was at MSU College of Law, she called me up or sent me a message one night that said, hey, I signed us up for a basket weaving workshop. And so the workshop was taught by Kelly Church, who was a 5th generation weaver. And so I wrote this poem to commemorate the occasion. I still have the flyer. There's the flyer for the workshop. I still have the email. And I have the basket. Sanara, do you have yours? Uh-oh, she's making a scary face.
I'm not sure, but mine was not nearly as good as yours. So
Yours was lovely. I hope you still have it. Ah, okay, black ash basket. My daughter and I weave black ash strips over, under, dip them in water to keep each pliable. My fingers smell like soil, like tree. Side by side, our shoulders brush, our hands grow tired from pulling each section taut. We take our place amongst generations of Ojibwe women who sat in circles alongside sisters, mothers, aunts. Although we wear jeans and sweaters, and when we break for a meal, we go to a cafeteria to fill our plates with fried rice and fortune cookies from the Chinese vendor. Our teacher is a 5th generation weaver. She keeps us on task, sets the rhythm over, under. My fingers smell like fiddlehead ferns, like work. My daughter hums, breathes softly. Our elbows touch. She is proud of her creation. We shape the weave gently between our palms so the baskets keep their form. Then over, under, over, under. My father's mother is our blood link. Was she a weaver too? Do we have her nose, eyes, or high cheekbones? We'll never know. My fingers smell like sweetgrass, like memory. Our forearms touch as we reach for the last strip of bark, over, under, over, under. We are almost finished. Born on Sugar Island on the 4th of July, my father's mother, Helene, died at 42. No grave marker mentions women like her. Her children left motherless, a name on a census roll. Ancestral pain runs deep in my veins and waves like the big lake, Michigami. It floods in my heart, in my daughters, that lake of our births. But unlike those before us, we shall let our voices be heard, rise to speak the rape and desecration of our past, and we will weave power into our baskets, place within them flowers, pebbles, beads aglow with light. After the workshop, we admire each other's handiwork, exclaim over perfectly woven rows. Smiling, we pose for a picture. Our fingers smell like cedar, like hope. Thank you.
Wow,
Here's
beautiful.
the basket. This was really hard to make. It took us, what, 4 hours, almost 5? It took us a long
Mine was much more lopsided.
Well, no, I think yours was cute. I don't know how mine came out because you were helping me with it. I
Teamwork.
just blurred. I don't know what happened.
It'll probably come back. You were probably, there you go.
There it goes. All right. Well, that was my last poem.
All right. Well,
It's
I'm gonna
really
read you some of the comments that we've gotten during the from Mary. It says, I love pure water images. And Mary also says the flow of poems tells a story of life in flashes of moments. Jill says beautiful. And another person says, I love that, the poem in the basket. So
Thank you.
yeah.
And so now we need questions. If you
Yeah.
want to ask me some questions. So I see one in there already. What do you miss about living in the Upper Peninsula? You know, honestly, I miss everything. I mean, I miss sitting down by the lake, going up to the island, hiking up to Sugarloaf. If I was in my living room, I have a picture of Sugarloaf and the Ore Docks that I bought, a couple of prints I bought in the gallery downtown. And my daughter has a beautiful place up there. They have a camp. And so I've been looking forward for a long time to maybe staying there sometime. It has no like water. It does have electricity though, doesn't it, Sanara? Yeah. Doesn't really have water.
It just comes right from Lake Superior.
Right.
And yeah,
Well, right. It's got that kind of water.
we're gonna get you set up to stay there this summer.
And Jill says that she was looking at a map of the UP as you were reading your poems and naming towns and stuff. So she was keeping track of where we were in the UP.
Well, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I like that. And Nema, thinking about Nema. Nema is really a ghost town now. There was never much there anyway when I was a kid.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. I'm wondering, one of my questions is, you know, because you said that the book started out as a book about directions and things like that. And the fox is so present in so many of those poems. So was that like an intentional thing where after you decided to shape it into tracking the fox, where the fox was just, you realized it was there, or did you insert the fox in poems, or?
No, he was quite accidental. You know, I wrote that poem and I really liked it. And then he kept showing up in all my poems.
Okay.
And so if my friend Ingrid was here tonight, but I don't see her, this is my fox she gave me. It's a fox. So yeah, it was a Christmas present. But yeah,
Awesome.
he just kept turning up. And so does the owl. The owls turn up in there too. And so I actually, another friend of mine made this, I found she makes necklaces
Mhm.
And so it's just a beautiful, like a wooden necklace with a
Mhm.
fox, and I saw it online and I thought, oh, how pretty. It goes with my whole theme, right, for my
Mhm.
book. And my dress has little foxes on it.
And so people, I mean, I know I've been writing poems about a certain subject and people give you gifts that are related to that subject. So have you been getting a lot of fox stuff?
Yes, I have been getting foxes. I got a little wooden fox Christmas ornament for my friend Lori, and I have
Mhm.
I have a fox t-shirt or shirt for my friend Mary. I have a
I'm
fox.
looking behind you on the bookshelf there behind you. It looks like there's a fox sketch or something. I
Oh,
don't
yeah.
know.
Yeah, my friend Matt had a fox sketch.
Wow.
Yeah, I have all these fox gifts that keep coming in. Oh, I have this great fox cup too that my friend Shelley gave me. So
Mm.
and I'm sure maybe I'll turn up with more fox things as time goes on.
Carolyn says, I always love hearing you read, and when I reread them, which I do often, I hear your voice in my head.
Thank you, Caroline. And thank you, Isabel. Isabel said Miigwech, very beautiful.
Mm. Does anybody have any other comments or questions? Sanara, I cannot get over how old you are because that just makes me feel much older than I feel.
Same.
That's just amazing to me because I mean, I remember when you were born, when your mom was in graduate school, so.
Thank you for moderating tonight. You did a lovely job.
Oh, thank
Yes.
you.
He always does a lovely job. You do a wonderful job, Marty. And you know what? Can you put me on an email list or something for the library? So I never really, unless I go and look, I never know what's going on.
Oh, sure.
And I like the Marquette Poets Circle page, but half the time I always miss their posts. I guess you have to go on there and write things and like things to see it more often.
Yeah, I can absolutely add you to the email list.
Yeah, add me
The
to the
Marquette
email
Poet
list.
Circle. Yeah.
Because I want to come to some of those events and I see them after the fact. And didn't you have Joy Harcho there as one of your?
Well, yeah, we had we did an NEA big read and Joy Harjo was the author. So yeah, I was able to sit in a Zoom meeting with just me and Joy Harjo and listen to her read and ask her questions, and everybody else watched, which was like one of the biggest thrills of my life to be able to.
I bet. Is that recorded someplace?
It is, yeah, you can find that on the page, the Peter
YouTube
White page. Yep, the YouTube page.
I've always been meaning, I saw it after the fact, and then I was meaning to go back and look for it and watch.
Yeah, it was amazing. I mean, the book, the poems that you were reading reminded me so much of Joy Harjo's poems too, and the fact that you read Joy Harjo's poem, which is one of my favorite poems of hers. I love that poem. But yeah, it doesn't surprise me that that was one of my questions. Like, what poets really sort of are, I call them my spirit poets, the ones that sort of really speak to me as a writer.
Yeah, I like that. Your spirit poets. I'm gonna steal that.
Yeah, so who are your spirit poets?
Well, Joy Harjo, because she came to Northern when we were there.
Mm-hmm.
And I met her. And then after I met her, I applied for a residency at the Atlantic City for the Arts, and she selected me for that.
Oh.
But I couldn't go because I was right after Sanara was born.
Mm.
So I had to decline. That's the first. That was so sad. I mean, that would have been the highlight of my whole life.
See what you did, Sanara?
You were
Well,
little.
she would have about 5% of the work that she has now, because most of her poems are about me. So think about all the inspiration.
Right, of course. All the poems are about her anyway. So she's like almost like 80 or 90% of my poems are about her. She's always in my poems. So it was a good thing. But you were actually born. You were like a year and a half or something. Yeah. So yeah. So I had, I just couldn't, I didn't have the money because I was still an adjunct then.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you had to like buy a plane ticket or drive there, and it was in Florida.
Yeah.
And it was like it's some remote area where you had to like rent a car to get to it. And after I tallied everything up, there was no way I could do it.
Yeah. So
But it was
Joy Harjo is one of your
Joy
spirit poets?
Harjo and Mary Oliver. Mary
Oh, yeah.
Oliver is another poet that I love. And when I lived in the UP, I used to be good friends with Judith Minty. And
Oh, yeah.
I used to love her poems, her Yellow Dog River Journal. And I have all her books too, or Walking the Bear.
Mm,
I have Joy Harjo. So yeah, those are my three women influences. Yeah, I think I've been influenced by a lot of women's poetry. I mean, I
mhm.
studied all the romantic British poets, but
Yeah, I mean, you've named like three of my spirit poets. I mean, Judith and Mary and Joy Harjo.
and Judith.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Judith Minty is like one of those, every UP poet or any poet that comes from the UP, like has a copy of Yellow Dog Journal
Yellow Dog-
on their shelf.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, she is like the true UP poet. She inspired me that way. And I
Mhm.
got to know her pretty well at some of those conferences. And I went to something down here in Ludington where she was at before she got really ill.
Mhm.
Yeah. And she did a blurb on one of my books. So,
Oh,
but
yeah,
this book I had Michael Delp. Do you remember Michael Delp?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Michael Delp and Jack Driscoll were also, but he's turned more towards fiction. We're writers that I like. You're going for male writers that I met and got to know really well. And Michael Delp did one of my blurbs on this book.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, Michael and I started corresponding. And so and then Janine Serto, she goes to Michigan State University. You probably wouldn't know her. She teaches there, but she did one of my blurbs. And then of course, and Terry Blackhawk.
Mm.
Do you know
Yeah.
Terry Blackhawk? She was from Detroit. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they did my blurbs. I was excited to get so many people that did my blurbs.
That is really exciting. Yeah, I think I think one of my blurbs was from Jack. So he was always it has always been very supportive of UP writers. So
Yes, definitely. And another interesting thing I did while I was writing this book was I attended a workshop with Jeffrey Levine, who is the editor of Tupelo Press, the founder editor of Tupelo Press. And he gave me a scholarship. So I only had to pay half price for it. His conferences are kind of pricey. They're like $1,000. Anyway, but you know what? I learned a lot about putting a book together. And so I started this book. I read the first poem in it, which is The Medicine Bag. And I read the last poem, which is the Black Ash Basket. And so I ended it with begin and end with two strong poems. And I learned a lot of things about going through your poems and pairing them. And my friend Margot and Mary, they both helped me pair up some of these poems and read, various versions of these poems in my writers groups. Both writers groups did as well. And so it wasn't effortless. It took a lot of and then the summer of 2021, I did the workshop with Jeffrey Levine and I put all of this together. So I had stacks of poems all over the floor and trying to find mates for them, how you would pair them up, and then what I would eliminate and what would end up being the chapbook. So it really is a process. And apparently I did something right for once. It actually won something, yeah. And I got $500, which was really cool because most people don't get paid for their poetry.
Yeah.
Now you have a book with Mayak Press, right?
Yeah, I did. I was very lucky to get connected with Judy Kerman, and she was fantastic and just so supportive. Just a great little press.
She has a great little press. I think I sent her not this manuscript, but another one, which I believe she rejected.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, she's still doing it outside of I think she's in New York now, outside of Woodstock, New York, or something like that. But yeah. All right, now we're getting near 8 o'clock. So
we've got 2 minutes. Any
so
more questions?
Rosalie and I are just having a conversation here, and you're just a part of it. So does anybody have any questions or any other comments? I don't mean to monopolize Rosalie's time here.
And Jill said there's nothing more powerful than hearing a writer read their own words out loud. So Jill and I are teachers at LCC, and I don't think she's ever heard me actually read all my poems, except at the women's literature reading, maybe.
Yeah, there is something really powerful about hearing a poet read their own work. I read to my students, I read other poets' works all the time, but I hardly ever read my own stuff except at events like this. So, yeah. All right.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. You've been a great audience.
Yep. Thank you so much. And thank you, Rosalie. You know what? Sanara says, great job, Mom.
Thank you, Sanara. I love you.
And if you're going to be up in the UP, we got to get together, Rosalie, if you're going to be up this summer sometime.
Yeah, I want to come up. Hopefully I'll be able to. So
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Just send me an email. We'll get together and maybe go to Founder's Landing or something.
yeah, sit on the beach.
We're not going to jump off Black Rock, Sanara. There's no way that's happening. But
I don't know how to swim, remember?
All right. Well, anyway, thank you all for coming, and thank you, Rosalie, again. It was such a beautiful, beautiful reading, and your book is absolutely gorgeous. And if you haven't picked up a copy of it, you should get a copy of it, because it's a true pleasure to read Rosalie's work anytime. So thank you, everybody.
Yes.
And thank you so much, Marty, for
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.